In a world where we often look to external sources for answers, Carl Jung's The Red Book reminds us of the incredible depths within our own minds. A journey not just through the psyche but into the very soul of human existence. This work captures the raw, unfiltered experience of confronting the unconscious. Through vivid dreams, visions, and intense inner dialogues, Jung invites us to explore the complex forces that shape our behavior, our relationships, and our understanding of ourselves. In this video, we'll dive into the powerful themes of the Red Book, uncovering its profound insights on the human experience, insights that continue to resonate with us today, guiding us toward a more integrated, conscious, and meaningful life. Prepare to embark on a transformative exploration of the mind, where the wisdom of the unconscious calls us to become whole, to embrace our shadows, and to ultimately discover the depths of our own humanity. In 1913, Carl Gustav Jung, a highly respected psychiatrist and once a close collaborator of Sigmund Freud, underwent a psychological and spiritual crisis that would forever reshape the course of modern psychology. What came out of that crisis was something extraordinary, almost mythical: the Red Book. Bound in red leather and filled with dreamlike paintings, visions, and symbolic narratives, this wasn't just a diary or a collection of thoughts. It was a direct window into Jung's evolving consciousness, an unfiltered record of his inner descent into the depths of the human psyche. At first glance, the Red Book looks like a medieval manuscript with its illuminated letters and rich imagery. But at its core, it's a psychological document. Jung called this journey a confrontation with the unconscious. Unlike others who might have run from inner chaos, Jung chose to engage with it. He didn't just observe his fantasies. He interacted with them, wrote dialogues with them, and painted them. He believed that hidden within these visions were not just fragments of his personal subconscious, but messages from something far greater, the collective unconscious of humanity. This experience wasn't something Jung undertook lightly. He feared for his sanity. He wrote during this time, "I had to let myself plummet down into the depths." Yet what he found in those depths would become the foundation for nearly all of his psychological theories. This is why the Red Book is not just a record of madness. It's the birth of a new understanding of human behavior. It reveals that the mind is not just logical or rational. It's also symbolic, mythic, and spiritual. Through his inner explorations, Jung realized that every person carries not just their own wounds, but also the unresolved struggles of humanity itself. He called this the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of shared human experiences, stories, fears, and desires. But to access it, he had to surrender his ego and become a student of the images that came from within. These weren't hallucinations in the clinical sense. They were deeply meaningful, guides that were trying to show him something about the soul. One of the most powerful messages in the Red Book is this: healing and wholeness do not come from avoiding our pain, but from confronting it directly. Jung believed that every person must descend into their own inner chaos to discover what lies beneath the surface. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. It is a kind of spiritual alchemy, turning psychological lead into gold. The pages of the Red Book are filled with Jung's visions of strange landscapes, prophetic figures, and symbolic creatures. These were not random fantasies. They were expressions of deep inner truths. He met characters like Philemon, a wise old man who became a kind of inner guru for Jung. Philemon taught Jung that the soul has its own voice, and if we learn to listen, we can be transformed. Jung didn't invent these characters, he discovered them, just as we all must discover the hidden parts of ourselves. For decades, the Red Book remained unpublished. Even Jung's closest followers didn't fully know what was inside. Some believed it was too personal, Others thought it was too mystical for the scientific world. It was finally made public in 2009, almost 50 years after Jung's death. When readers finally opened it, they found not just a psychological document, but a spiritual map for the modern soul. Jung's boldness in facing his inner world set a precedent for all who seek to understand themselves deeply. In a world that often pushes us to numb our feelings or stay distracted, Jung invites us to slow down, go inward, and explore. The Red Book reminds us that our greatest truths often lie hidden in the places we fear to look. It teaches that the mind is more than a machine. It's a mystery, one worth exploring with courage, humility, and an open heart. Carl Jung's descent into the unconscious was not a passive drift into fantasy. It was a conscious, deliberate journey into the deepest layers of his psyche. After his professional split with Sigmund Freud, Jung found himself disoriented, uncertain of his beliefs, and emotionally overwhelmed. Instead of escaping into distractions or superficial activities, he chose to face his inner turmoil head-on. This decision marked the beginning of what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a process that he documented in the Red Book. Jung didn't see the unconscious as simply a dumping ground for unwanted thoughts and memories like Freud had proposed. Instead, he believed the unconscious was intelligent, purposeful, and deeply symbolic. It held not just repressed memories, but also creative energies, ancient wisdom, and hidden aspects of the self. By engaging with it, one could access profound truths about human nature and personal growth. To explore this hidden realm, Jung used a method he called active imagination. He would sit quietly, allow images to arise from his unconscious, and then interact with them. He would speak to the figures he saw, write down their messages, and paint the landscapes they revealed. This wasn't daydreaming. It was a deeply intense and emotionally challenging process. Jung compared it to being submerged in a powerful, unknown current. In this state, he encountered vivid and often disturbing visions. He saw a flood that threatened to swallow all of Europe, a great tree sprouting from a human body, and countless mythological figures that seemed both alien and familiar. Each vision felt charged with emotional energy, and each carried a message, though its meaning was not always immediately clear. What makes Jung's journey so unique is that he treated these visions not as meaningless fantasies, but as parts of himself. Every figure he encountered, the wise old man, the demonic serpent, the tragic hero, represented an aspect of his own psyche. These weren't external beings, but internal realities waiting to be acknowledged and understood. In this way, Jung began to build his model of the psyche, a complex structure made of the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and the vast collective unconscious shared by all humans. During this period, Jung often questioned his own sanity. He once wrote, "I was frequently so moved that I had to struggle quite violently to control my emotions." But instead of breaking under the pressure, he emerged with a richer understanding of the self. He learned that the unconscious doesn't speak in words or logic, it speaks in symbols, dreams, and metaphors. And those symbols aren't random, they are deeply rooted in human experience. One of the most profound realizations Jung had was that the unconscious is not just a dark place. It is also a source of wisdom, creativity, and transformation. However, it is a double-edged sword. If ignored or repressed, it can lead to anxiety, depression, and inner conflict. But if embraced with awareness, it can guide a person to wholeness and balance. Jung believed that each person has a destiny that can only be uncovered by listening to the inner voice of the unconscious. His descent was not a one-time event. It was a process that took years and required immense courage. He had to unlearn everything he thought he knew about reality and learn to trust the symbolic language of the soul. This journey transformed him, not just as a psychologist, but as a human being. What Jung encountered in the depths of his unconscious is something we all carry within us: fear, desire, mystery, and the longing to understand who we truly are. His work teaches us that ignoring the unconscious doesn't make it disappear. It only makes it more powerful. But by turning toward it with curiosity and humility, we can unlock insights that lead to deep healing and personal growth. Jung's journey into the unconscious is a powerful reminder that within each of us lies an inner world filled with forgotten stories, unexplored potentials, and hidden truths. If we dare to explore it, as Jung did, we might just find the missing pieces of ourselves. One of Carl Jung's most powerful and challenging ideas is the concept of the shadow. During his inner journey, as recorded in the Red Book, Jung realized that a large part of who we are remains hidden, not because it's insignificant, but because it's difficult to face. The shadow represents all the parts of ourselves that we reject, deny, or suppress. Our fears, insecurities, impulses, and desires that we don't want to admit even to ourselves. Jung discovered that these disowned parts don't disappear just because we ignore them. Instead, they live in the unconscious, influencing our emotions, decisions, and relationships in subtle and sometimes destructive ways. The shadow is not just evil or dangerous. It also contains strength, creativity, and deep truth. But to unlock that potential, we must first confront what we've tried so hard to avoid. In the Red Book, Jung documents his own encounters with shadow figures, dark, mysterious, and often terrifying characters that emerged in his visions. They weren't there to harm him. They were mirrors, showing him sides of himself he hadn't accepted. One of the key lessons Jung learned was this: if we do not face our shadow, it will control us from the background. But if we acknowledge it, we gain power and self-awareness. Shadow work is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. This means integrating both the light and dark aspects of our personality. Many people go through life trying to be good, according to society's standards, pushing down anger, jealousy, lust, or pride. But those emotions don't vanish. They gather power in the unconscious. Jung warned that a person who does not confront their shadow can become trapped by it, acting out in ways they don't understand. For example, someone who denies their anger may find themselves exploding in rage at small annoyances. Someone who suppresses their ambition may feel envious of others' success. The shadow often shows up in projections, when we see in others what we can't admit in ourselves. This is why we may feel irrational hatred or admiration for certain people. Jung believed that recognizing these projections is a step toward reclaiming lost parts of ourselves. In Jung's vision, the path to psychological growth requires entering the darkness, not to stay there, but to understand it. He wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is not an easy process. It takes courage to face the truth about ourselves. But the reward is freedom, a life less ruled by fear, guilt, and confusion. Importantly, Jung didn't see the shadow as purely negative. It contains qualities we may have buried in childhood, like confidence, assertiveness, or spontaneity. A shy person might discover their shadow is bold. A rigid person might find their shadow is creative and chaotic. By integrating these parts, we become more authentic and balanced. Jung believed that shadow work is essential for individuation, the process of becoming one's true self. Without it, we remain fragmented, wearing masks to please others or avoid pain. But when we face our shadow, we begin to live from a place of inner truth. We stop blaming others for our feelings. We stop fearing the parts of ourselves that once seemed dangerous. The Red Book is full of symbolic dialogues with the shadow. Jung doesn't fight it or try to destroy it. He listens, questions, and learns. He treats it not as an enemy, but as a teacher. This approach can be life-changing. When we shift from avoiding our shadow to understanding it, we grow in emotional depth, resilience, and self-acceptance. Jung's exploration of the shadow remains one of the most relevant psychological ideas today. In a world that encourages perfection and constant positivity, the shadow reminds us that wholeness includes all of our humanity, the beautiful and the broken. To truly know ourselves, we must look into the darkness and say, "This too is me." As Carl Jung continued to explore the depths of his psyche through the visions and symbols in the Red Book, he began to notice patterns, universal images, characters, and themes that seemed to go beyond his personal experiences. These recurring forms appeared in myths, religions, dreams, and stories from all cultures and all ages. Jung came to believe that these patterns weren't just coincidences. They were expressions of something much deeper, a shared psychic structure he called the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, which holds forgotten memories and repressed emotions unique to an individual, the collective unconscious is a vast inherited reservoir of human experience. Jung believed that every person is born with this layer of the psyche, which contains archetypes, universal symbols that shape how we experience the world. Archetypes are not fixed personalities, but rather deep patterns of meaning. They show up in dreams, religious symbols, films, and even in the way we perceive people. Jung identified many of these, including the hero, the mother, the wise old man, the trickster, and the shadow. These figures appear across cultures, often in similar forms, suggesting they are not taught, they are born within us. In the Red Book, Jung encountered many such archetypal figures. One of the most important was Philemon, a wise, bearded guide who appeared in his visions. Jung treated Philemon as an inner teacher, a representation of the wise old man archetype. Though he knew Philemon was a product of his unconscious, Jung felt that his insights were not just his own thoughts. They came from a deeper source, one that belonged to all of humanity. This experience helped Jung define the idea that archetypes live in us, but are not created by us. They shape our instincts, fears, desires, and relationships. For example, the mother archetype doesn't refer to any specific woman, but to the idea of nurture, care, and creation. It might appear in a dream as a goddess, an animal, or even a tree. Each archetype can take countless forms depending on the individual and the culture, but the emotional energy behind it is universal. Jung saw the collective unconscious as a kind of psychic blueprint that connects all human beings. Whether we're aware of it or not, it influences our behaviors and reactions. That's why people from different continents may tell similar stories or find the same symbols in their dreams. It's why religious symbols like the cross, the serpent, or the mandala appear in cultures that never had contact with one another. Understanding archetypes, Jung believed, helps us understand ourselves. When we recognize which archetypal forces are active in our lives, we gain insight into our inner conflicts and desires. For example, someone stuck in a repetitive cycle of failure might be unconsciously living out the victim or orphan archetype. Someone who feels a deep need to protect others might be embodying the hero or caregiver. By naming these forces, we can begin to work with them rather than be controlled by them. Archetypes also appear during major life transitions, times of crisis, transformation, or spiritual awakening. Jung noticed that people often dream of gods, demons, or mythical journeys during these times. It's not that the unconscious suddenly becomes more active, but rather that we begin to hear it more clearly. The symbols arise to guide us, offering direction from the deepest parts of our psyche. Importantly, Jung didn't see the collective unconscious as mystical or supernatural. For him, it was a natural part of being human. Just as we inherit physical traits, we also inherit psychological structures. And while we cannot see it directly, we can observe its effects in our dreams, fantasies, and cultural creations. The Red Book is a vivid demonstration of the collective unconscious at work. Jung didn't invent the images he encountered, he discovered them. And through that discovery, he came to understand that we are not isolated minds, but part of a larger psychological tapestry. We are connected not just by history or biology, but by the symbols and stories we carry within us. As Carl Jung continued to explore the depths of his psyche through the visions and symbols in the Red Book, he began to notice patterns, universal images, characters, and themes that seemed to go beyond his personal experiences. These recurring forms appeared in myths, religions, dreams, and stories from all cultures and all ages. Jung came to believe that these patterns weren't just coincidences, they were expressions of something much deeper, a shared psychic structure he called the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, which holds forgotten memories and repressed emotions unique to an individual, the collective unconscious is a vast inherited reservoir of human experience. Jung believed that every person is born with this layer of the psyche which contains archetypes, universal symbols that shape how we experience the world. Archetypes are not fixed personalities, but rather deep patterns of meaning. They show up in dreams, religious symbols, films, and even in the way we perceive people. Jung identified many of these, including the hero, the mother, the wise old man, the trickster, and the shadow. These figures appear across cultures, often in similar forms, suggesting they are not taught, they are born within us. In the Red Book, Jung encountered many such archetypal figures. One of the most important was Philemon, a wise, bearded guide who appeared in his visions. Jung treated Philemon as an inner teacher, a representation of the wise old man archetype. Though he knew Philemon was a product of his unconscious, Jung felt that his insights were not just his own thoughts. They came from a deeper source, one that belonged to all of humanity. This experience helped Jung define the idea that archetypes live in us, but are not created by us. They shape our instincts, fears, desires, and relationships. For example, the mother archetype doesn't refer to any specific woman, but to the idea of nurture, care, and creation. It might appear in a dream as a goddess, an animal, or even a tree. Each archetype can take countless forms depending on the individual and the culture, but the emotional energy behind it is universal. Jung saw the collective unconscious as a kind of psychic blueprint that connects all human beings. Whether we're aware of it or not, it influences our behaviors and reactions. That's why people from different continents may tell similar stories or find the same symbols in their dreams. It's why religious symbols like the cross, the serpent, or the mandala appear in cultures that never had contact with one another. Understanding archetypes, Jung believed, helps us understand ourselves. When we recognize which archetypal forces are active in our lives, we gain insight into our inner conflicts and desires. For example, someone stuck in a repetitive cycle of failure might be unconsciously living out the victim or orphan archetype. Someone who feels a deep need to protect others might be embodying the hero or caregiver. By naming these forces, we can begin to work with them rather than be controlled by them. Archetypes also appear during major life transitions, times of crisis, transformation, or spiritual awakening. Jung noticed that people often dream of gods, demons, or mythical journeys during these times. It's not that the unconscious suddenly becomes more active, but rather that we begin to hear it more clearly. The symbols arise to guide us, offering direction from the deepest parts of our psyche. Importantly, Jung didn't see the collective unconscious as mystical or supernatural. For him, it was a natural part of being human. Just as we inherit physical traits, We also inherit psychological structures, and while we cannot see it directly, we can observe its effects in our dreams, fantasies, and cultural creations. The Red Book is a vivid demonstration of the collective unconscious at work. Jung didn't invent the images he encountered, he discovered them. And through that discovery, he came to understand that we are not isolated minds, but part of a larger psychological tapestry. We are connected, not just by history or biology, but by the symbols and stories we carry within us. At the heart of Carl Jung's entire psychological system, and especially the visions and reflections captured in the Red Book, is the concept of individuation. Jung didn't believe the purpose of life was to be perfect, successful, or even happy in a superficial way. He believed the true goal of human existence was to become whole. This process of becoming whole, of integrating all aspects of the psyche, is what he called individuation. Individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you truly are beneath the layers of conditioning, expectations, and unconscious patterns. It requires peeling back the mask of the persona, the social face we wear to fit in, and diving into the deeper layers of the self. This means confronting the shadow, understanding our anima or animus, and becoming aware of the archetypes shaping our inner world. In the Red Book, Jung underwent his own individuation journey. He didn't just think about psychological ideas, he lived them. He allowed his dreams, fantasies, and visions to guide him through the darkest parts of his unconscious. He questioned everything he had believed. He faced fear, loneliness, madness, and mystery. But through it all, he began to discover a deeper sense of self, one that was not controlled by ego, but rooted in something eternal. This deeper self is what Jung called the self, not the ego, which is our conscious sense of I, but the whole of the psyche. The self includes the conscious and unconscious, the light and dark, the masculine and feminine, the personal and the universal. Individuation is the process of aligning the ego with the self. When this alignment begins, life takes on new meaning, not because problems disappear, but because we are no longer divided within ourselves. Individuation is not a straight path. It is a spiral, a journey that often brings us back to old wounds, fears, or patterns, but each time with more awareness. It involves periods of confusion, breakdown, and transformation. But Jung believed these difficult moments are signs that the soul is trying to grow. Pain, in his view, is not just suffering. It is the pressure of the unconscious pushing us toward inner change. One of the most powerful insights from Jung's work is that individuation is deeply personal. No two people will walk the same path. Symbols, dreams, and archetypes will appear differently to each of us. What heals one person may not work for another. That's why Jung encouraged listening to our inner world through dreams, art, meditation, and reflection as a way to find our unique way forward. Jung also believed that individuation has a spiritual dimension. He saw the psyche not just as a biological system, but as something sacred. Many of his visions in the Red Book had religious or mythological themes, not because he was inventing them, but because the unconscious speaks in the language of symbols that have always been used to explore the divine. For Jung, becoming whole was not just psychological, it was also a path to the soul. Importantly, individuation is not about withdrawing from the world. It's about returning to it with greater awareness. A person who has begun to individuate becomes more authentic, more capable of love, and more grounded in truth. They are less likely to follow the crowd or be trapped by outer expectations. They live from within, and in doing so, they become a light for others, not by preaching, but simply by being real. Jung warned that ignoring the need for individuation can lead to inner deadness, feeling lost, anxious, or numb. even if everything on the outside looks fine. That's because the soul knows when we are not being true to ourselves, and it will call to us through dreams, symptoms, and struggles until we listen. The Red Book is the living record of Jung's individuation journey. It is messy, intense, and at times even terrifying, but also filled with beauty, wisdom, and transformation. Through it, Jung invites us to begin our own journey, not toward perfection, but toward wholeness. Among the most unique and powerful methods Carl Jung developed and used extensively in the Red Book was something he called active imagination. This wasn't just daydreaming or passive reflection. It was a conscious technique to explore the unconscious mind by engaging directly with the images, voices, and symbols that arise from within. Jung developed this method during a time of deep personal crisis. After his break with Freud, he began experiencing vivid visions, symbols, and even what he called waking dreams. Rather than dismissing these experiences as madness, Jung chose to investigate them. He began writing down his dialogues with inner figures, drawing the symbols he saw and following the emotional energy wherever it led. This deliberate creative process became the core of the Red Book and the foundation for active imagination. The technique works like this. A person starts with a mental image, dream, or emotion, then allows the unconscious to respond, almost like having a conversation with a part of the psyche. Instead of analyzing the dream from a distance, the person enters into it. You might ask a dream character why they appeared, or visualize a landscape and see where it leads. You might even draw or paint what you see. The goal is not control, but participation. Through active imagination, Jung encountered a wide cast of symbolic characters: wise old men, dark shadows, godlike figures, and mysterious women. He spoke with them, questioned them, even argued with them. These were not hallucinations to him, but living expressions of deeper truths. They represented parts of his unconscious that were asking to be heard. By giving them a voice, Jung was integrating them into his conscious mind. This is the essence of active imagination, creating a bridge between the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. Jung believed that our inner world is alive and that we ignore it at our peril. The unconscious is not just a trash bin for repressed thoughts. It holds creativity, insight, and guidance. But to access it, we must be willing to engage it as if it were real. We must listen to the inner voice, however strange or symbolic it may sound. Active imagination can take many forms. Some people write dialogues, others draw or paint, and some simply sit in silence and allow images to arise. The key is to remain conscious and not lose yourself in the fantasy. Jung warned that without a strong ego and anchored sense of self, active imagination could be dangerous. But for those grounded enough to handle it, it becomes a transformative path to self-understanding. What makes this method so unique is that it gives the unconscious a chance to express itself directly without being censored or interpreted too quickly. Often we are quick to explain our feelings or dreams using logic. Active imagination asks us instead to feel, see, and interact with what arises without judgment. Over time, this builds a deep relationship with the inner world. In modern terms, active imagination could be seen as a kind of inner dialogue or creative meditation. It's not about escaping reality, but entering more fully into our psychological reality. The insights that emerge can be powerful, sometimes unsettling, but often healing. Jung described moments in which these dialogues brought him to tears or filled him with awe. They revealed truths he had never encountered in books or theories. Perhaps one of the most important aspects of active imagination is that it puts healing and transformation in the hands of the individual. Jung believed that the unconscious wants to help us evolve. It sends us dreams, symbols, and emotional clues not to confuse us, but to guide us. active imagination is a way of listening to those messages, of treating the inner life as sacred and worthy of attention. In the Red Book, we see active imagination in action, raw, emotional, mysterious. It is not always clear or easy to understand, but it is deeply human. Through this method, Jung entered the depths of the psyche and emerged with insights that would change psychology forever. He showed that the path to wholeness lies not in avoiding our inner world, but in facing it, engaging with it, and letting it speak. For Carl Jung, dreams were not just random or meaningless fragments of thought. They were sacred messages from the unconscious, filled with symbols that revealed the hidden truth of our inner life. In the Red Book, dreams played a central role in guiding Jung's journey inward. They were like signposts on a dark path, lighting the way toward greater self-awareness and wholeness. Jung believed that every dream, no matter how strange or fragmented, carried meaning. Unlike Freud, who focused mainly on repressed desires and sexual themes in dreams, Jung saw them as expressions of the total psyche. Dreams, in his view, came from both the personal unconscious, our forgotten or suppressed experiences, and the collective unconscious, the shared human heritage of archetypes and symbols. This meant that dreams could speak in both personal and universal languages at the same time. In the Red Book, Jung recorded many of his own dreams. They often included intense images of ancient gods, spiritual figures, mythical creatures, and even apocalyptic landscapes. These dreams weren't just puzzles to solve. They were invitations to listen more deeply to himself. Jung approached each dream with curiosity, asking what part of his soul was speaking and what message it wanted to share. One of Jung's key insights was that the unconscious tries to bring balance to the psyche through dreams. If someone is too rigid or too caught up in their ego, the unconscious may send a dream that shocks or challenges them. If someone is lost or overwhelmed, the unconscious might send a protective figure or guiding symbol. The goal is not to disturb us, but to help us grow by confronting us with parts of ourselves we've ignored, denied, or forgotten. Jung encouraged people to record their dreams, not just to analyze them intellectually, but to feel them, draw them, even speak with the figures in them through active imagination. He believed dreams were like letters from the soul, and if we ignored them, we would miss important truths about who we are. Dreams often contain the shadow, the anima or animus, or archetypal themes like death and rebirth. These aren't literal predictions, but symbolic reflections of psychological realities. For example, dreaming of a death might not mean someone will die, but that a part of the self is ready to be transformed. A journey through a dark forest might symbolize a time of inner confusion and growth. A meeting with a wise old figure could be the unconscious revealing inner wisdom the ego hasn't yet discovered. Jung believed that when we understand these symbols, not through rigid interpretation but through reflection and dialogue, we begin to understand the soul's language. He also introduced the idea of dream compensation. This means that dreams often balance what's missing in our waking life. A proud person may dream of being humiliated. A passive person might dream of being a warrior. This compensatory function is how the psyche strives for equilibrium, always nudging us toward wholeness. The dream doesn't flatter the ego, it educates it. In the Red Book, Jung treated his dreams with great respect. He didn't dismiss them or rush to explain them. He let them shape his thoughts, his art, and his personal development. He even believed that the dream world was just as real, psychologically, as the waking world. That doesn't mean dreams predict the future, but they do carry emotional and symbolic truth, which can guide us if we're willing to listen. For modern people, Jung's view of dreams is a powerful reminder that there is wisdom within us that we often overlook. In a world focused on logic, productivity, and external success, Dreams call us back to the inner life. They remind us of our emotions, our forgotten desires, our creativity, and our spiritual hunger. They show us who we are beneath the surface. Jung taught that if we pay attention to our dreams, we begin to form a relationship with the unconscious, and that relationship becomes a source of guidance, healing, and transformation. The more we listen, the more the unconscious responds, not with chaos, but with clarity. Carl Jung's The Red Book stands as a cornerstone of his psychological theory and an expression of his profound personal journey into the depths of the unconscious. More than just a collection of visions and reflections, the Red Book represents Jung's dedication to understanding the full complexity of the human psyche. It has left a lasting legacy, not only in the field of psychology, but also in how we understand the human condition, personal growth, and the nature of the soul. One of the most significant aspects of the Red Book is how it challenges the conventional understanding of the unconscious. Traditional psychology before Jung was heavily focused on surface-level symptoms and behaviors, treating the psyche as a machine to be fixed or controlled. Jung, however, opened a new door. He saw the unconscious not as something to be feared or eliminated, but as a vast, creative, and necessary part of our existence. His work encouraged a more holistic, integrative view of the mind, one that embraced complexity, contradiction, and growth through self-exploration. The book is also a testament to Jung's belief in the power of the individual's inner world. While the Red Book is deeply personal, it speaks to something universal: the quest for meaning, the struggle to understand oneself, and the need for spiritual and psychological wholeness. Through his journey, Jung demonstrated that the unconscious holds more than just repressed memories or unresolved conflicts. It is a source of guidance, creativity, and wisdom. For Jung, tapping into the unconscious was not about finding pathology, but about finding healing, transformation, and the potential for deeper self-awareness. In modern times, the Red Book continues to resonate with people who are seeking meaning and direction in their lives. Its influence can be seen in various fields, from psychology and psychotherapy to art, literature, and spirituality. Many therapists and counselors used Jungian concepts such as archetypes, active imagination, and the integration of the shadow to help individuals explore their unconscious and heal from inner conflicts. The book has also inspired countless artists, writers, and spiritual seekers, offering them a new way to understand the symbols and metaphors that shape the inner world. Jung's concept of individuation, a central theme in the Red Book, has had a profound impact on how we think about personal growth. Rather than seeing development as a linear process of achieving external success or conforming to societal norms, individuation is about becoming the fullest version of ourselves, embracing both our light and dark aspects. It's a lifelong journey of self-discovery, integration, and transformation, and the Red Book serves as a guidebook for those who are willing to embark on that path. The legacy of the Red Book also extends to its impact on how we approach spirituality. Jung's exploration of the unconscious led him to consider the psyche's spiritual dimensions. He recognized that the search for meaning, connection, and purpose is a fundamental part of the human experience, and his work has paved the way for a more integrated approach to spirituality, one that does not shy away from the complexities of the human psyche, but embraces them. His understanding of the collective unconscious and archetypes has allowed us to see how spiritual symbols and myths are universal and timeless, emerging from the deep recesses of the human soul. The Red Book also offers a model for approaching life's crises and challenges. Rather than avoiding difficulty or seeking to escape suffering, Jung's journey through the Red Book shows us that growth often comes from facing our inner darkness and embracing the painful yet transformative experiences that challenge our sense of self. This perspective has influenced countless people who view personal struggle not as a sign of failure, but as an opportunity for deeper insight and healing. In sum, the Red Book is not just a historical or academic work. It is an invitation to all of us to explore the unconscious mind, to face our own shadows, to listen to the wisdom within, and to embark on the path of individuation. Its legacy is one of profound personal and collective transformation, offering a new way to understand the human psyche and our shared journey toward wholeness.